Hey there, future celeb, and welcome to How to Be Famous with Whitney Ulland. I'm your host, Whitney Ulland. Now, I'm a big believer that the world would be a better place if more good-hearted people were able to make a massive impact. And if fame is calling to you, then there is an audience for you, and I'm here to show you how to find it. In this show, we are diving into the art of becoming a self-made celebrity. And no, you do not need $1 million ad budget or a team of talented agents. You already have the power inside of you, and I'm here to show you how to unlock it. I'm here to help the talented artists, creatives, and influencers tap into what I call celebrity energy so that you can become the magnet for the opportunities, fame, and success that you know that you were born for. But we're not here just for fame's sake. We're about making a positive impact, sharing your unique voice, and ultimately connecting to like-minded souls who also want to make a massive impact. So join me as we explore the stories, secrets, and strategies to help you shine brighter and leave your mark on this world. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and entertained, because this process is really about turning your dreams into a reality and finding the audience that is obsessed with you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and together we will embark on the journey where I show you how to be famous.
Hello and welcome to How to Be Famous with Whitney Ulland. I'm your host, Whitney Ulland, and I am so excited to bring today's guest on. Today we have the incredible Ashley Wheeler, and Ashley is such an incredible person and example and content creator and mom and all of the things. So we're going to get into all of that in just a second. But why don't you just give my listeners a little bit of a kind of elevator pitch of what kind of content you're making and what your whole deal is?
Yeah, I mean, we're still unpacking that a little bit too.
Right.
It's been in the mentorship, but my name is Ashley Wheeler, as Whitney already said, and I have been creating content for a very long time, but really right now my focus is to empower women to find income sources from home, as well as helping to educate to even grow that income further. So I'm super excited that I'm actually fully stepping into that now.
Yes, Ashley and I were just talking before we started recording that she's such a great example of someone who I think this is what's so funny about coaching is like a lot of the time once we get into coaching and we uncover the blocks, it's like, oh my God, the answer was right there all along.
Oh my gosh,
Right?
yeah.
It's like the
Oh yeah.
things that like we talk about or the content we create or whatever. It's just like, oh, like there's no issue with what kind of content do I make or whatever. It's like as soon as you get out of your own way and your own brain, that's when it just the answers are there. And I feel like for me, witnessing your journey. So I'll just share. So for anyone who, just for context, so Ashley was part of my 6-week TikTok mastermind, and now she's in my mentorship program. She's joining us in Cabo San Lucas, which I'm so freaking excited about. We can hang at the beach and do coaching and all the things. But yeah, so we're at the beginning of the mentorship, but we've been working together for a couple months now. So let me ask you this. When you first, and you just gave such a beautiful job of explaining. Also, I don't know that I fully finished this thought, but basically I think you were such a great example of once we got out of your way, I was like, Ashley, this is what you these things are all right here. And you're like, oh my God, they are. And to me, that was witnessing that journey was such a you already have all of the pieces, and it was just about seeing yourself as a thought leader, seeing yourself as the expert, seeing yourself as that celebrity. And that's when all those things revealed themselves. But let me ask you this, what was your where do you feel like you were when you found me and when you decided to do the TikTok mastermind? What were you struggling with? What were you hoping to get out of it? Where was your mind at kind of?
Yeah, and I'll give a slight little bit of context and a little
Yeah.
Sparks Notes version, but I've been a content creator for a very long time. I have loved content creation, videography, even as far back as high school. But 2017 was when I actually opened up an account separate to my personal on Instagram to start talking about my journey with finding income sources online, because I was the mom who was working full time, wishing I could be home with my babies. But then when I did have that opportunity, I was guilt tripping myself mentally,
Mhm.
saying, I wish I had more income for my family. Because at the time we had 6 kids at home. Nowadays we just have 3. And
Just three.
just 3. I know it seems like that's still a lot, but no, we've had a rotating 6 for quite a while. We have a total of 8 between my husband and I. And I just understood that struggle, and I really wanted to be able to financially provide for my family, but also give enough time to my kids. And so I was like, there has to be other people out there like me. So I
Mhm.
separated an account and started growing it because I didn't want people that I knew to know what I was doing. My brain said I wanted to show the money before anyone could or like sabotage me out
Mhm.
of my dream. So that's what I started to do. And in last summer, I had really dove into one specific income source and kind of became known for that. And as I started to see my business shift last year, just due to some like health things in my family, I was like, I don't want to be known as Ashley Wheeler, the reseller anymore. And so I
Mm.
started to run away from that thought. And I was like, I have a pretty big following. I had already started a little bit of TikTok, and I was like, maybe I can just be a mom content creator. Maybe I can just
Mm.
talk about cleaning and stuff like that. So at that point, I had hired someone to help me work with brands. And she was like, yeah, you already have a lot of the, understanding of content creation. Let's just make sure you're going to be someone who brands want to work with. And I started doing that for about 6 months. And right about the time that I started to listen to your content, I had a conversation with this gal, and she said, you know what, Ashley, I don't think you even know how you want to show up online. And to be
Mm.
honest, that was true, because as I stated, I was kind of running away from what I had been doing because I wanted to be able to have more conversations, not just around the one topic that I had been talking about, particularly the one source of income that I had built up to 6 figures. I wanted to expand on it. And about that time, like I said, is when you started to come into the picture. And I think you were the one that has said it in some of your videos, like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I realized like I needed to go back to identity. Like I needed
Mhm.
to take a step back. Instead of focusing on let's work with brand deals, I needed to understand how I wanted to show up. And it was
Mm.
so funny because when our first mastermind came about, I just started to express that desire to want to help other families fund their dreams, fund their families' dreams. And you caught on to, out of everything I said, that was like the one thing you caught on to. And I think it's because you saw the spark when I talked about it. And
Mhm.
you were like, Ashley, why aren't you doing digital products? And to be frank, I was like mad at you after the call. I was like, no, like, why is she saying that? And then like, it's around 20, the beginning of the year. So my husband and I start doing goal setting. My husband says the same thing. And I'm like, why does everyone keep saying that to me? Like, stop it. And I have really had to internalize the mental block. It wasn't that I was actually angry at you. I had so much
Mm.
fear surrounding that it just showed in anger, if you will, at that
Of
point.
course, of course. No, I love that. And I love that. I honestly like that's, I think, also why you're so successful is that you're someone who can take feedback and be like, I'm gonna sit with this. And like, obviously, if I was being abusive or whatever, I think you would be like, I'm gonna walk away now.
Right,
But like
right.
you sat with it and you're like, let me look at myself, let me see what I'm hiding from and
Oh
see.
yeah.
And even in that story, so you shared, I love this, that like, when you started, you're like, let's do a private account. And that's always like such a thing for people is they're like, I'll start a second account. And then because I work with so many multi-passionate people, then they're like, all of a sudden they have like 8 accounts happening. And they're like, and this one's for my jewelry, and this one's for my coaching business, and this one's for my my readings, or
Right.
whatever it is. And so and it is that identity work of being seen for like who you really are. What do you feel like was there a tipping point, maybe even before we started working together, where you were like, okay, like that kind of created that safety for you to show up as yourself, at least? And even it sounds like you had kind of, this was the image that came to mind for me, is like if there's like a leaking bowl of water, it's like like you need the money, right? That's like the leak. And so it's like, let me clog this leak instead of like, let me take a step back and create a new bowl. Right?
Right.
Or like, let me like create the thing that actually is what I want. And obviously there are times that we kind of are just like in survival mode. We have to just be like, what's the quick fix right now?
Yeah.
But for me, it sounds like you kind of had this evolution of like your desire to be seen and to really see yourself in an expanded way. So could you talk a little bit about what that transition was like for you to like, to go from like, I don't want anyone to see this, to being able to like be seen as yourself more?
Yeah. I think that, to your point, with monetarily, you know, I was really diving into what are different income sources. And it's funny because I created a YouTube video that never actually got published on my account of like the different things that I was doing income sources on, like, okay, I'm trying reselling, which is basically flipping clothing and shoes on platforms like Poshmark and eBay. There's a lot of other platforms nowadays. And then I also at the time had network marketing in there. I also had some affiliate but reselling was the thing that really took off for me. And so that's why I really narrowed my focus and just went all in with that and started sharing my journey, started to grow my platform, started to get recognized by the platforms that I was selling on. And so around that time, and granted, my account was technically public. My personal account was the one that went private because that was another just protection thing. I had a lot of like location, my kids' schools and stuff on there. So I kept that private and was trying to be a little more cautious with what was going on my business account. Eventually, friends and family started to find those accounts and I started to get more comfortable being seen. But I think it really for me came down to, was it actually financially producing? And it still is kind of a crack up to this day. People are like, okay, so what is it that you do? And I actually had a friend that came over one time and I was like, no, come downstairs. You can see I have like stacked shelves with inventory. And they're like, whoa, like this is a serious business. I was like, yeah, what did you think it was? Like,
Well,
but
and
yeah, I think just the evolution of that, I was comfortable being seen more.
And I think that's also just so telling, like, that's such a good example to me for you of you because you're so, and where I think your power really lies is like from the outside, it's just like you seem so relatable and you seem so like, oh, this is just like a thing that Ashley's like doing. And then it's like, no, this is like a very strategic, like very intentional business. And like I have a lot of freaking information on how to do this, which is almost like surprising, which I think is what like people connect to probably is like you. And so let me ask you this, because I think when we were talking about like, selling an information product, I do remember that call. I think it was like maybe in the first call where I was like, and I obviously like I'm a coach, but I don't say this to like very many of my clients. So I was like, I think you're a thought leader coach. Like I think that it's like your mission isn't just like, let me teach you these actions. It's like, and that's kind of what I was talking about when like all of these is like even this habit, if you don't mind me sharing, we were coaching this last week on an income source that you were ready to let go of, and the big leap to do that, and all of this stuff, and I was like, yeah, like it sounds like after we're coaching, we decide, you decide that it feels best to let go of, and then we're texting about it, and you're like, oh yeah, that was to help, like that's where I learned how to like invest money, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? You also know how to invest money, not just make it like, and all this to say, it just like now, and we'll get into this in a second, but like as you mentioned, like empowering women around finances, I was just like, Ashley, you have all of the pieces here. You have had these here all along, and it just was this fear. So let me ask you, what do you feel like is or was that big fear or that new identity leap that felt so scary?
Again, being in the reseller world, I feel like there was a big stigma for a while of like, people don't pay for this sort of education. Like there's so much free information on Google and on YouTube, like don't spend your hard-earned money to educate. So there was that like hurdle. But then also kind of, as I mentioned, I've also been a part of network marketing businesses. That's how my husband and I first got to know each other, or we married, of course, but that's how we met is what I meant to say. But also I saw a lot of gaslighting and I saw a lot of manipulation in that. And I started to see a lot of similarities with network marketing to some of the leadership speakers that I was listening to. And if there's one thing about me is I'm very big on vulnerability and integrity, and I carry the weight of that sort of feeling. And I want to make sure that people, if they're getting value from me, that it's everything that they need to fulfill what it is that they're supposed to do. And so in essence, I think go back a little bit and go, well, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person that charges you. I understand what it's like to be poor. I understand what it's like to be in foreclosure. Like I want you to have that leg up. And so I think for the longest time, I sold myself short by trying to give as much information and not really monetizing that. And
Yeah.
one of the hurdles that we had to walk through, I finally got to a place where I was challenging that thought that you had and that thought that my husband had. And I remember, I think maybe it was our third meeting. I'm sitting in a coffee shop, almost to the point of tears. I think I did start crying in that call because I was like, I'm shaking right now. My palms are sweaty, my hands are sweaty, but I'm sitting here writing the ebook. I'm like, why
Mm,
is my body freaking out like this?
yeah.
And he really had to coach me through that reality of my audience does want this. My audience knows the value that I've been providing for years, and they're waiting for me to provide this product. And that was so evident in the first week of me creating it. Not only were people buying it, but people were like, I'm so excited to learn about this, and I'm so excited to support you. And it was
Yes.
that statement right there helped me realize that it's true. People were waiting for that and wanting to support me even further. I needed to stop cutting myself short.
Well, I want to break down a few things that you said because so y'all have probably heard me talk about this, but we have this like internal thermostat of how good we think things get and how much money we can make. And it's basically what our current identity is. And witnessed an identity like breakthrough, right? In you of being like, okay, I'm going to stop undervaluing and I'm going to like start, monetizing for this information, which as a sidebar, I think I was raised in an abusive religion. Anyone who's been through any kind of like pyramid scheme, MLM, like whatever, it's like to me, that actually made me such a better leader because now I'm like, now I know like how to not do that. And like I think, in the MLM world, which is very prevalent in the Mormon community as well, there is a lot of like a lot of the gaslighting is because they're selling that it's a business opportunity, but the only information they're giving is like mindset, whereas your work is like so practical. It is like right. And it's not just like, oh, here, this is your fault because, you're like in the weeds, you're like
Yes.
brainstorming, you're like, these are the actual tactical things. And so for me, I think when you experience that kind of abuse, and this is my experience, this is what I witnessed in you, you become so much more aware to be like, how do I make sure to not be that? And how can I make sure to actually give my clients value? But at the beginning, those exact blocks are what keep you from showing up in that way, right? You're like, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to take advantage of them the way that I was taken advantage of or whatever. And so that's kind of like always what I'm saying. I'm like, the people who are the most evolved, who are the most self-aware, it's like, you actually should be the ones charging. You should be the ones like taking out space. You should be the ones being a thought leader. But yeah, I guess like so going back to this, I think I witnessed you like have this identity shed, which sounds so fun and it freaks your nervous system out. And your nervous system is like, and so I'm curious, do you happen to remember what your brain was like afraid of that leap? Like what like identity shift was going to mean? Because I even remember at one point we were coaching and I said something about you being a leader and you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm like on city council. And I was like, what? Or like you were going to or something. I'm like, Ashley, you just keep burying the leads. Like all of the pieces were right here. Anyway, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think to that point, being perceived, man, I think it's been so easy for me over the years to want to shrink back, want
Hmm.
to be more invisible, but people kept seeing in me what I was unwilling to see in myself. And for the longest time, I had to start saying, okay, I'm going to believe in your thoughts until I can believe in mine. But there has to come a point where there's a shift where, you just have to own it. And yeah, I've been on city council since 2018, and that's been something that I've kept very near and dear to me, a little bit for privacy purposes again, but
Hmm.
also just because, again, I don't want to be perceived, but my heart has always been to make an impact, like I said, with women, but even more importantly, in the community I'm in. I
Yeah.
want my kids to have different things. And so I get to be that mom that gets to bring solutions to the community, which I love because I feel like it's very vision focused. But I
Hmm.
think that reality of being perceived, being okay with having opinions, being okay with being an educator, really just, as you mentioned kind of at the beginning, it was there all along.
Hmm.
The stuff was there all along. It kind of reminded me of like when you're taking like 100 pictures and you're trying to find the right picture. Typically it's that first like one or two that you took that you're like, yeah, that's actually the one. I don't know why I just spent 30 minutes trying to get it right. Like,
100%.
and
Yes.
so I think I had to come to a place of realizing that I do have value. My words have meaning, and being able to step into that confidently and not shrink back with the fear of, what are people going to think of me? Are people think I'm going to try to take their money? You know, because what we're doing is just putting on other people what our own traumas are. And as you've always mentioned, like people can sense that and feel that. And so I really had to do that inner work of believing that, as I just said, like having that confidence and that value and being able to bring it, because my heart is to empower women and empower families.
I love that so much. I'm curious if you're comfortable sharing, like something that I hear a lot of the time from my clients is they're afraid of kind of like losing support or outgrowing a partner or whatever. And I just see, I haven't met your husband yet, but I see him as someone who just like really supports you in your journey. And I'm curious, like, how has all of this growth impacted your relationship? And like, is that something, again, it seems like he's very supportive, but I'm just curious if you're willing to share.
Yeah, so it's funny because yeah, that was your topic this last week too with the quantum leap. And it was funny because as I was listening to it, not funny, but like as I was hearing you talk about the things that people have to work through, I was like, man, I'm so blessed that that's not the situation for me where it's a negative thing. He's always been my cheerleader. And there was actually one season where, so he did seasonal firefighting, wildland firefighting.
Oh,
So
wow.
he would be gone for like months at a time. And there was about a year, maybe a couple years ago now, where I was getting success. I was being asked to speak at a conference. I was being asked to be on Times Square, like on one of the advertisements. And I felt like I couldn't celebrate it as much because he wasn't here. And I didn't realize what an encouragement he is to me on a daily basis. And because there would be moments, I mean, he's in the forest, they wouldn't have service. So there would be like hours or possibly even days where I could barely talk with him. And I began to realize, we've been together now for 12 years, how much he has built me up over the years
Mm.
and supported me in my strengths rather than focusing on, and I can't remember if we've talked about this or not. It's something I want to talk about on YouTube, TikTok eventually. But my husband is really good at understanding strengths and weaknesses rather than attaching strengths and weaknesses as feminine or masculine. So for example,
So
us
smart.
just talking about city council, for the longest time, I tried to push him into that role. I think inadvertently, I knew I was supposed to do that, but that's what the man does. At least that was my perspective.
Yeah.
And so I
Mhm.
was like pushing him into that. Meanwhile, a couple years later, people are asking me to be on. And I'm like, why me? Like, why aren't you looking at my husband? And it was my husband coming to me. I was talking with him and I was like, should I apply? Should I not? He's like, Ashley, this is you. He's like, you
Mm.
have the strength for this. You have the voice for this. You have the ideas. He said, this is you. This isn't me. And that was
Mm.
that reality that like, no, I can actually step into this because he's not insecure at all about who he is or our relationship at all. He knows that I can stand firmly into something and he can cheer me on. And it doesn't have to be a masculine or feminine. I can't talk. A feminine fight. There we go.
Totally. Ah, I love that so much. That's so exciting. And I think, as I was, coaching people this week, a lot of the people that I was giving coaching to were single. And a lot of the work was around finding or like even believing that those kind of partnerships are possible, right? Because so many, and that is, and that it doesn't actually have anything to do with gender, right? It just has to do with the person being supportive of you. So I love that. I am curious also, like, I don't exactly know. I just kind of want to talk to you about motherhood and about like how you feel like if that has impact. I mean, I'm sure it's like that's such a part of your mission. And to me, I was raised and kind of being taught that motherhood was this very like feminine, caring, loving, nurturing thing, which it is. But I think that definition missed out on kind of this like mama bear. No, like I'm gonna do whatever it takes to take care of my kids. And like
Yeah.
I really see that in you of being like, no, I'm gonna financially provide. I'm gonna step in, I'm gonna have all of these kids and make all of their dreams come true. Like that's what we're doing here. I'm curious, like, has that been something that's always been a part of you, or has that been something that's like evolved as your like was that the genesis of starting the business? Or yeah, just any thoughts you have?
Yeah, a couple thoughts actually. So my parents divorced when I was 6. And so my mom really raised my brother and I from 6 until I was in 8th grade when she met my stepdad. And they're still together now. But I really saw that independence come from my mom. Like the mom's got a toolbox. She can do her stuff, like she can pay the bills. Like that's how I watched her, but at the same coin to that, I was the oldest, it was me and my brother, and I had to grow up really fast.
Mhm.
I had to become the second mom, that we couldn't afford a babysitter. So I was having to like quietly babysit at home when I was not the actual age of being able to do that.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with some different things that there are markers that I can look back at now and go, yes, this is probably why I have such a core mission on some
Mm.
of these things. And one particularly, we couldn't afford to do like sports, we couldn't afford to do activities. And I remember going to like a daycare where their daughter was in ballet, and I got to watch behind that class while she was doing her thing and going, I wish I could do that. And I think
Mm.
that same girl also got to do ice skating. And I just dreamt of that sort of stuff. I was very creative, very into the theatrical dance, all of that. And so junior high came around, and I ended up, there was tryouts for dance, and I asked my mom, and she's like, no, we can't afford that. So I did like every normal person do. I went behind her back and tried out anyways. And I got in, and I remember having a conversation with her where she was like, we can't afford that. Like, how am I going to get you to practices? It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. And even in 8th grade, I was like, Mom, if I got to get some work, I will do it, which I ended up fundraising a ton. And I did end up getting work eventually, I think my freshman year in my summer, so I could pay for this stuff. But I remember looking at her and going, but Mom, you can't tell me that I can't dance. And
Mm.
this passion and desire in me, I think in that very moment, I told myself someday when I have kids, I never want them to have such a burning passion that I have to say, no, we can't afford that too.
Yeah.
Because I understood what that no felt like. And it's not just, I want to be clear and say, I'm not saying yes to all of my kids' stuff.
Of
But for
course.
example, my daughter, she's 7 now. She's been since 3 years old, teaching herself to do cartwheels. She has a little mat that she puts up against the wall. She wants me to time her as she does headstands. At like 4 years old, I'm like, this girl has drive that like kind of reminds me of myself in many ways.
Yeah.
She wanted to do tumbling. I'm like, let's get you into tumbling. And just this past year, she decided to do some dance, and she's actually doing her first dance competition this weekend. But like, I've watched her do a drive, and I've just been like, okay, let me support you in that. Like, I'm not
Oh,
going to push you. If you wanted to say no, I mean, we're going to commit. If you commit to a year, we're committing. But if you want to, after this year, say you're done, like, that's fine. But I will support you in what it is that you want to set your mind to.
so, okay, this is so good. And I freaking love this. And this is also why I'm just like, you're such the person to help women in the same way. So, okay, for example, just as like a little bit of context, my dad, he was a software developer. And so he like made good money, but he was a contractor who was always inconsistent. And I knew the burden of that. And it was tough on me as a kid, but I watched him say, whatever you need for your dreams, we'll figure it out. Like he was very like, it's non-negotiable. And he would go out and make the money to make it happen. And so that's very much because that's what I saw. That's what I do for my kid, right? I'm like, you will not catch him with a need that I'm not going to find the money for, like 100%. However, and I feel like that's kind of where you're at with that as well, right? Like if there's something, if your kid all of a sudden needs $1,000 medical bill, you're going to figure it out, right? Like you're going to do it. You're not going to be the mom that says, I can't afford that. So we both maybe have that same look on parenting, but because that was just something that was patterned to me, I'm not really that passionate about it. And I don't teach people how to make money for
Yeah.
their kids, right? Whereas for you, you're like, no, I went through the fucking trenches here. So this is really important to me. This really matters. And now that's such a part of your mission, right? And so, and I think to me, like that's why you're so inspiring and such a good example of why I love helping good-hearted artists, creatives, and influencers who are the people who like went through some shit. Like for me, it's like being silenced, not having a voice and having my voice then weaponized against me. Now that's my mission, right? Whatever and it really is about alchemizing the painful parts of your life and the parts that you were told no, or the times that you were silenced or whatever it was, and then building something on that and like sharing and helping other people. So I'm just like, I'm in awe of you. I love that this is your mission. So then I guess like moving forward, what are you wanting? Like, what is the next version of Ashley creating? And how are you like, and I mean, we'll coach on this at some point if you don't give me the right answer here. But what is that next version of you? What are you looking to create next?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've really unpacked a lot just even with the last couple weeks. And so through the mastermind, I started a vlog, a daily vlog where I wanted to hit 15K, so $15,000 in 100 days. Because beginning of the year, we kind of realized, wow, we're in debt. Let's get some of this taken care of. And I was like, let me go back to having fun with like side hustles and like seeing what money I can generate to do that. But in the process of doing that, it brought together all of the pillars that I wanted to be talking about. It talks about my family. It talks about me struggling as a neurodivergent ADHDer with kids with ADHD. How do we manage an entrepreneurial business from home and do homeschooling and have the neurodivergency of things? Like, I get to show that on a daily basis. And through the process, people are like, wait, you're doing what? How are you doing this? How are you making this money? And inadvertently, it allowed me to create my ebook, and I'm working on a couple of other digital products right now. My main goal is to help people with passive income. And I'm showing you firsthand. And that's, again, I think going back to what we were talking about from the beginning, I don't want to just teach you. I want to show you. I want to be able to have the success and go, look, I've done it. Now let me take you through the process as well. And it's cringy in my opinion right now. I feel like some of the times I'm like, I hardly made any money today. Like, I don't want to post this, but I think that shows the reality of entrepreneurship, that it just ever evolves and goes up and down. But then I started reading a book. Where's my backpack? It's called, Drats, what is it called? She Invests, I think, or something like that. I'll have to double check on it. But that was the book that I screenshot and I sent to you, because the beginning of the book, it's talking about, and it made sense when I started to think about history, but women weren't allowed to own property. Well, not even, only like a couple hundred years ago. And when things were passed down in the family, it was passed to the boys. It wasn't passed to the women. The women were supposed to basically get their status through their husbands. And so the concept started to talk about how the media still even kind of plays into that. Women are to be the shopping spree people, or the ones that are trying to catch a buck by using the coupons, whereas the men are the ones in the suits going to the NASDAQ and doing all the investments and stuff like that. Well, last 7 years, I've been in an investment firm. I've learned what it is to invest and save. I've learned that you don't need a job to get benefits, that you can have retirement accounts outside of that, and how to do that and how much you can put in every single year. So I began to realize, like, no, this isn't just about empowering women to find income sources at home. It's also to help them save and multiply that income, because I love money. If you guys haven't understood yet, my hobby is making money. I just have always been fascinated with it. I have no problem talking income with people. That's why I was really good at my job. But because of that, I like, if I feel this way, if I've struggled with these things as a mom, you don't need to have 6 kids to, I think, have this struggle. I think corporate America has done us a lot of disjustice, and I want to be able to give people back the reins.
It's so good. And it's also just like I celebrate you. And I'm personally super grateful for you and for your willingness to show up, even though it feels really cringy right now, because you actually have inspired me. And like I have a kind of crazy amount of debt right now. And I've already paid down, I should look up the numbers, but I think like $8,000 in the last 2 months.
That's
Thanks to
amazing.
like your example and like the things that you've been telling me. So I know that like I'm not the only person who is so impacted by what you're sharing, and I'm so excited. Like, then that's just you sharing the example, not even like necessarily having the course for it yet or the digital product,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And so
right.
I'm just so excited for all of that to like come back to you. I'm curious. Okay, the last question I have
Mhm.
is, you said at the beginning you were worried that other people were not going to want to invest in information. What do you believe, which is kind of funny because like you clearly do. So
Yeah, I
like,
was gonna say there's irony in that.
yeah. So like, what do you feel like if someone is like, oh, I don't know if I want to invest in, an information product, in a coach, in myself, essentially my brain, like what are your thoughts around that? And what would you tell them to do?
Yeah, honestly, I do have a lot of thoughts around it, because I was the person that tried to go to college, and because it was the thing to do, even though my brain was like, I don't feel like I need this. Like, I think I can keep learning on my own. But I tried to go to school and my financial aid ran out. And so I have half a degree. And when I came home in 2009, I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make a name for myself as I go into my career world. And the one thing I always told myself is I will not let a half degree limit what I am capable of in the workplace. Like I will
So
be able
good.
to show people that I can still do it just as good as those that were able to get that higher education. I just couldn't afford it. So when I started to understand that people do create courses, people do create books, people do teach on leadership, I was like, again, even though I don't have a piece of paper that says I have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, I can still educate myself every single day. And that's been something that I've been doing since I was 19 in leadership books, like you said, in courses. I understand the value in getting that education. You don't need a piece of paper to tell you that you are smart, that you can run a business. And I mean, especially in what we do, whether it's entrepreneurship or like marketing or content creation, by the time you're done with the degree, a lot of it is obsolete. So, I mean, it's not going to
Totally.
really do a benefit anyway. So constantly educating and realizing the new level you're at, and then finding the mentors that are going to be able to keep you going, take you to the next level, I think is so important. And so it is ironic because I have continued to invest countless thousands of dollars over the years to continue to be educated. And yet I somehow was telling myself it wasn't for me. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts around it. Don't ever let your education that's on paper limit you.
Oh, I love that so much. And I'm also just like, we got to make content about all of this. By we, I mean you. But anyway, well, thank you so much for giving us the time. Is there anything else I want you to share, like where people can find you, and then anything else that you want people to know, or any
Yeah.
advice you have?
So Ashley Wheeler of 8, number 8 at the end, is on TikTok, Instagram, and I will be starting up my YouTube channel again. My kids also want to do a YouTube channel. And as I mentioned, we are a neurodivergent family. And so that is going to be our YouTube name. But we're stepping into that one slowly. But if you want to learn about how to make passive income or also understand investing, I haven't started creating that content yet, but that was literally fresh hot off the press this last week with Whitney and I said like, wait, no, I should start talking about this. So
Yeah.
that'll be coming because I love educating around that.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on another episode of How to Be Famous. If you found today's episode to be helpful, then make sure to subscribe and leave me a review or tag me on Instagram at Whitney Ulland. Your feedback helps me to continue making empowering content. And if you're ready to be the next big thing and you want to take this work even deeper and work with me directly to become a self-made celebrity, then head to the link in the show notes where you can learn how to coach with me directly. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or gossip, then feel free to slide into my DMs. They are always open. I'm at Whitney Ulland on TikTok and Instagram. I always love hearing your stories, celebrations, and wins. And remember, this is not about fame for fame's sake. It's about making a positive impact, bringing your dreams to life, and inspiring people along the way. Stay inspired, stay ambitious, and most importantly, stay true to your authentic self. Until next time, I'm Whitney Ulland, and this is How to Be Famous with Whitney Ulland.